What happens when a quiet guardian clashes with an arrogant provocateur? In the vibrant throng outside Buckingham Palace, Oliver, a royal guard, finds his stoic poise tested by Chad, an entitled tourist whose desperate attempts for attention spiral into disrespect. As Chad hurls coins and jeers, the crowd's laughter blurs the line between entertainment and indignity. But in a pivotal moment, Oliver's unwavering silence transforms him into an unlikely hero, showcasing that true strength lies in grace under fire. Will the crowd ultimately recognize the value of dignity over bravado? The sun blazed brightly over Buckingham Palace, its golden rays turning the centuries-old structure into a magnificent tapestry of stone and history. Tourists swarmed the area, their eager chatter blending with the jovial sounds of laughter and celebration, echoing off the regal facade. Kids darted between adults, vying for spots to snap pictures with the imposing royal guard stationed just beyond the wrought iron gates. The air was thick with anticipation and curiosity as families posed with wide smiles and outstretched arms, capturing memories of their cultural pilgrimage to one of London's crown jewels. Social media influencers, armed with smartphones, maneuvered themselves into position to film the perfect introductory video against the grand backdrop. In the heart of this cheerful chaos stood Oliver, a steadfast royal guard, with a presence as serene as the afternoon sky. Clad in his iconic red tunic and tall bearskin hat, he personified the very essence of British tradition. His disciplined posture, honed through years of rigorous training, seemed unshakable amidst the vibrancy surrounding him. Yet beneath the calm exterior was a turbulent sea of thoughts. He understood that his duty was more than standing still. It was preserving the dignity of his role in a world that frequently blurred lines between entertainment and respect. Oliver had long ago learned that true strength was silent, and status often generated contention. It was at this moment of vibrant contrast that Chad, a provocateur driven by a need to engage and amuse his peers, melded into the tumultuous crowd. With an air of entitlement that could only stem from privilege, he strutted toward the guard, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. Dressed in designer shorts and a loud Hawaiian shirt that screamed attention, he was a complete foil to Oliver's composed demeanor. Chad thrived on amusement, yearning to be the center of attention at all costs. While Oliver's motivation was to remain poised and dignified, Chad was determined to transform this sacred space into his personal stage for performance. "Oi, guard!" Chad shouted, loud enough for nearby tourists to turn their cameras toward him. "Smile for the picture, would you?" He tossed a handful of coins onto the ground at Oliver's feet, the metallic clinking startling the atmosphere. Laughter erupted from the crowd, a mixture of amusement and bewilderment, creating a tension Oliver could feel building. As Chad's act spiraled into a series of rude gestures, tugging playfully at his bearskin hat, gleeful cheers bounced back from those who found mischief the highlight of their visit. Oliver's heart quickened as the revelry grew louder. He felt the weight of the crowd's gaze, curious and expectant, urging him to react. "Come on, everyone else is having fun." Chad leaned closer, eyes alight with mischief, catching the reflection of the sun's rays. He reveled in the attention, oblivious to Oliver's unwavering silence. The gulf between Oliver's patience and Chad's bravado widened, and for a moment, Oliver was caught in a storm of conflicting emotions. He wanted to uphold his integrity while addressing the disruption stirred by this rambunctious intruder with a sense of destiny. And yet, in the quietest moment amid all the chaos, Oliver remained resolute. He clenched his jaw but held his ground, embodying the very silence that seemed to amplify the absurdity of Chad's antics. In the face of such provocation, the soft winds of change began to rustle the leaves of the trees lining the palace grounds, foreshadowing a conflict that threatened to engulf them both. Small acts of disrespect were a catalyst for larger issues, and as the sun bore witness to this clash, it illuminated not just the monument behind Oliver, but the burgeoning confrontation set against the backdrop of tradition and entitlement. As the sun beamed down on the throngs gathered outside Buckingham Palace, Chad's bravado escalated. He stepped closer to Oliver, his laughter resonating through the air like a taunt. The crowd swelled with anticipation, a sea of eager faces reveling in the spectacle. "What's the matter? You too good to even look at me? He jeered, tossing a handful of coins at Oliver's feet, the dull clink creating a merciless rhythm that punctuated his mockery. The crowd erupted in laughter, circulating energy that danced dangerously between amusement and outrage. Oliver remained unmoved, his gaze fixed ahead, heart steady amid the torrent of jeers. Each coin that fell to the ground felt like a challenge, an act of aggression disguised as frivolity. And yet he stood unwavering. His thoughts turned inward. This was about more than just him. It was a test of dignity and commitment to his duty. You just need to get a reaction, don't you? Chad continued, leaning closer. Aren't you going to entertain us? I'm here to guard, not be your entertainment, Oliver finally spoke, his voice low and steady, yet a flicker of conflict crumpled in his chest. It wasn't just the insults. It was the complicity of the crowd. Deep down, he felt a swirl of emotions, anger at Chad's antics, frustration with the gleeful onlookers, and an undeniable urge to uphold the dignity of his role. The more Chad pushed, the more resolve he mustered. Could he rise above the petty provocation? The crowd shifted again, eyes darting between the two men, their laughter lowing into hushed murmurs, lingering in a tenuous balance. Who do you think you are? Chad retorted, shoving another coin towards Oliver, mischievous sparks dancing in his eyes. Are you invincible? Just a bunch of wool and a fancy hat? Oliver felt the weight of the bearskin hat on his head, a powerful symbol of tradition and history. I stand for something, he insisted, holding his ground. More than you ever will. His words hung in the air, and for a moment the laughter caught in the throats of those watching. Some seemed to reconsider their merriment, realizing they might enjoy a spectacle, but at someone else's expense. You're just a guard. You have no power here, Chad sneered. The words lashed through the crowd. Wait until I dip my fingers into your hat. And then he made his move. Without warning, Chad lunged forward, hands reaching for the rim of Oliver's bearskin hat. A gasp shivered through the crowd, and time seemed to suspend in that moment as the guard's training and instinct kicked in without thought. With a measured breath, Oliver's hand flew to his hat, securing it firmly against his head, pulling away with a finesse that caught Chad momentarily off guard. Don't, he warned, his tone serious, the undercurrent of emotion thickening the air around them. Chad stumbled back, surprise flooding his features. The tension shifted again. The crowd's laughter turned to muted awe. Oliver could feel the collective heartbeat of the spectators. A shared moment of reckoning was brewing. They'd seen arrogance at work, greed for laughter, yet Oliver's simplicity spoke louder than 1,000 jibes. You think you're the star? Chad shouted, his bravado faltering as he stumbled, trying to regain his footing. But even as he spoke, the crowd's laughter receded, replaced by murmurs of confusion and a dawning realization. They didn't want to cheer for entitlement. They wanted to stand with dignity. Oliver's heart raced, his senses sharpened by the swell of social expectation and the challenge of doing right. This isn't a game, Chad. You're crossing a line, Oliver said, his voice rising above the hum, laced with genuine concern rather than anger. Moments hung heavy between them, a congregation unaware of how steep a decline they were witnessing. Chad took a step back, a flicker of hesitation passing across his face. Was it shame, or could it be something else entirely? The audacity that fueled Chad began to crack, his bravado flaking away like paint, leaving exposed the raw edges of his ego. What's wrong with you? Chad stammered, frustrated by the lack of reaction. His gaze flitted nervously across the crowd as whispers grew, disapproving and uncertain. For Oliver, it wasn't merely about standing in silence. It was about claiming his space without succumbing to the chaos. He was battling the monster of disrespect, not only directed at himself, but against the time-honored values of the service he represented. And as the currents changed, the air grew heavy with the weight of unasked questions. Who would be the victor, arrogance or dignity? In that pivotal moment, the sudden quiet that enveloped the crowd bespeaks the profound shift taking place. The thrill of the show at Chad's expense began to fade like the setting sun. What remained was an uneasy tension as both men faced one another, trapped in the balance of something that now felt much larger than a mere stunt. What would happen when the applause faded? Would Chad continue his charade, or would he relent, showing something deeper than bravado. Oliver remained poised, his eyes fixed intently on Chad, awaiting whatever terrible yet transformative dance in this tangled waltz would follow. As the festival of color and laughter danced in the air, the shifting atmosphere abruptly halted, creating an electrifying tension that hung heavy like fog. With a final mocking laugh, Chad lunged, grasping for Oliver's bearskin hat, intent on asserting his dominance. "Come on, mate! Show us you've got a sense of humor!" Chad sneered, his voice cutting through the murmurs. The crowd gasped, their excitement giving way to unease as Oliver's eyes narrowed. The stillness surrounding him spoke louder than any words could. His demeanor remained unyielding as he firmly pressed his hand against his hat, safeguarding not just tradition, but his own dignity. In that fleeting moment, a reflective silence enveloped the throng, and they strained to understand the unfolding drama. No one expected Oliver's calm composure to overshadow the tempest of Chad's bravado. This was it, the breaking point, where the soul of the royal guard clashed with the arrogance of an entitled intruder. "Your need for attention is pathetic," Oliver finally spoke, his voice steady yet tinged with restrained disappointment. "Dignity isn't something bought with coins or won with disrespect." He looked over at the crowd, his gaze holding the weight of an unspoken message. Chad staggered back, eyes wide in shock. "What are you serious?" His bravado waned, replaced by confusion and a flicker of fear, as he stumbled over the invisible yet potent barrier of public opinion. "Look around!" Oliver gestured to the crowd, whose expressions morphed from laughter to silent reproach. "You've come here to enjoy this moment, but you are the one ruining it." The air crackled with realization as murmurs swept through the spectators, their laughter replaced with a newfound awareness of the disrespect on display. As Chad's bravado diminished, the crowd's gaze shifted, now filled with a pivotal understanding. They were no longer amused by his antics. They bore witness to the potent clash of respect against arrogance. Oliver stood tall, embodying the silent resilience that spoke volumes. Turning his back to the fallen Chad, whose charade lay in tatters, Oliver's heart surged with newfound clarity. Respect, once earned, silences the loudest provocations. It was a moment of crashing insight, not merely for Oliver, but for every person present. The realization that dignity is not about how one presents themselves to the world, but in how one conducts oneself amid chaos. As the crowd began to disperse, a new atmosphere filled the air, a reverence that lingered in the wake of Oliver's silent stand. People moved away from Chad, who fidgeted under their judgment, his bravado dissipating like mist in the morning sun. Oliver, though still stoic, felt a spark of warmth from the onlookers, who now looked at him not just as a guard, but as a symbol of integrity. "Thank you," a young girl whispered, her eyes wide with admiration as she passed by. Oliver nodded slightly, a small acknowledgement of the connection he had forged with brief but significant integrity. Chad, desperate for validation, ranted to his friends, yet his voice faltered as they exchanged skeptical glances. He realized that his antics had not only failed to entertain, but had instead lost him the respect of those around him. With each step away from the palace, he felt their disapproval claw at his ego. As twilight descended upon Buckingham Palace, Oliver looked out across the vibrant scene, where laughter now celebrated unity rather than division. This confrontation had taught him that he could champion dignity, inspiring others to embrace empathy in their daily lives. The crowd's transformation became a reminder that dignity was a shared value, one that could redefine moments of discord into lessons of respect.